If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart case. It's Memorial Weekend 2023, and most people are celebrating with friends, family, and having fun today. The same is not true for Kristin's family, her friends, for Cal Poly students, and for the SLO community as a whole, Rio Grande especially. A shadow of sadness hangs over us, especially with the still missing piece of finding Kristin. The search continues. If you follow our channel, you already know that we usually share videos of our adventures. We encourage others to get out and explore and quench your curiosity. Go ahead and live this beautiful life. Although we don't document it, we are always keeping our eyes peeled, looking for Kristin. With our new teardrop camper adventures especially, we often find animal bones. Bobby found human bones during an irrigation repair. He turned it over to the authorities, and it's expected to be Native American remains. And that discovery is not uncommon in our area because Chumash Indians inhabited this area for tens of thousands of years. We will never forget Kristin and will keep up our search for her. I've been following any and all new info regarding Kristin on this anniversary. I'll share what's been going on. Nothing earth-shattering, but still part of her story. I also had the pleasure to speak to one of Kristin's buddies from Oahu, Hawaii. Kristin loved Hawaii. The defense even tried to deflect and say Kristin might be in Hawaii, living happily ever after. This friend of hers was even named and accused by defense to be her possible killer. Or possibly who she ran away with. I taped some of our phone call, and he did email me for several months. I'm going to start with coverage on this, the 27th anniversary of Kristin's disappearance. From there, I'll update you on the rest, including where Creeper Paul is now housed. I don't focus coverage on that POS. He doesn't deserve recognition. This is about Kristin and her family, not Paul and his twisted family. At least Paul is finally where he belongs, with no good news in sight for him. By the way, it's tough for me to cover tragedies, but Kristin is special. She deserves my time and energy. You probably don't realize it, but these episodes take me hours and hours over several days to complete. I do scripting, screenshots, research, and finally production, including the voiceover and then YouTube studio. It's a lot. It's not fun like our adventure videos, but I'm compelled to do it. Hashtag find Kristin Smart. Remember the musicians that I was hanging out with that performed on Verdict Day for Kristin at Dinosaur Caves Park? Well, they're back to celebrate Kristin. For the last 6 years, every May 25th, they return to Kristin's memorial to pay tribute to a life taken too soon. The musicians have become close. They're now friends with each other and the Smart family, and over the years, I've actually known one of the musicians, and she's a wonderful lady, and I really enjoyed spending time with them. What lovely people they are. People who restore some of my faith in humanity. One of the musicians said this about Kristin, quote, "She loved music, she loved people, she loved to travel, and I think everything that we represent, every song we sing is for her, and I know she feels it," end quote. I'll add that my discussions with Kristin's Hawaii friend reiterated how fun Kristin was. Her love for people, music, and she was so funny, even a bit mischievous at times, in a good way, of course. I just had to take a break and cry a little bit. I feel connected to Kristin, and this tragedy hurts my soul. And I realize her case is also triggering for me, and I'm not going to get into the details, but my own daughter was missing an entire year when she was 16 years old, from June to June. I didn't know where she was or if she was dead or alive. If you know our family, you already know the details, and thankfully my child came home to me to be reunited with everyone that loves her. It was truly the worst year of my life. With the help of therapy, supportive family, and lots of prayers, I got through the pain. The pain the Smarts have experienced is no comparison, and my heart breaks for them. Okay, back to Kristin and the updates. The musicians performed Kristin's special songs, like Sheryl Crow's Soak Up the Sun, which was her favorite, Here Comes the Sun, which her mom Denise would sing to her. And at this year's get-together, it was different than the other anniversaries because Paul was convicted in October of 2022 and is now serving 15 years to life in state prison. I thought this was a typo because he actually got 25 years to life, but I'll explain that later. Women in this country and LA especially are safer now that Predator Paul, aka Chester, is off the streets. By the way, the LAPD still has not charged Paul with rape or the child porn, as evidence seized from his home proves, nor did I ever receive any reply from the LADA to my email demanding Paul be charged for the above-mentioned crimes. A local man refers to the Smarts as an amazing family, and the love locals provide the family helps with the family's healing. One of the musicians shared, quote, "I think she would be so happy. The sea was one of her favorite places. The 19 years that she was on this earth was amazing, and she brought love and joy to everyone that she was with," end quote. Now that I have spoken to one of Kristin's many friends myself, I know some personal stories of how fun and silly and amazing she really was. This tribute celebration for Kristin will continue every year on the anniversary of her disappearance. Cal Poly also held a vigil for Kristin on campus. 27 purple flowers were placed on the lawn, symbolizing 27 years since she was killed. Purple flower seeds were also scattered around the memorial. One Poly student shared, quote, "We're here to obviously remember her, but also to ensure that we're doing our part in making an effort to help our community and ensure that women don't have to be scared when they're walking home at night," end quote. Currently, there is no permanent memorial for Kristin on campus, but a Poly spokesperson said it's eager to do so, and they are in communication with the Smart family. Speaking of Cal Poly, they have issued an apology. President Jeffrey D. Armstrong issued the apology, and in part he said, quote, "We're very sorry for the Smart family and what they've endured. We recognize that things should have been done differently, and I personally wish that they had." I'm going to find the full apology and include it in this episode. Kristin's friend said when they called Cal Poly police, they wouldn't even take a missing persons report. And days later, when they finally did, they told Kristin's family that she was likely camping. Due to Kristin's tragedy, new safety programs have been created on campus, and the Kristin Smart Campus Safety Act was signed in 1998, mandating all California public colleges to set up framework for handling these situations better. Here is Cal Poly President's full statement. First, it must be said that I can't imagine the pain and hurt Kristin's family has felt and still feels. We are very sorry for what the Smart family has endured. What they have been through is unimaginably heartbreaking, and I feel for them in ways I can't express with words. While it's a different administration now that was in place in 1996, we recognize that things should have been done differently, and I personally wish they had. On behalf of Cal Poly leadership, I can say that as people who live in this community with families and human emotions ourselves, Kristin's story is something that is always with us and weighs heavy on our hearts. Her story continues to be part of the Cal Poly story, and we are determined to do all we can to help ensure the safety of our students now and in the future. While we will never be able to control what an individual with bad intent decides to do, we are constantly working to help ensure things like this don't happen again at Cal Poly. Cal Poly places the utmost priority on the safety of its campus community. The university has robust programming aimed at providing public safety services to all of our students, employees, and visitors. We abide by the Kristin Smart Campus Security Act and the Clary Act, maintaining agreements to report relevant cases to local law enforcement and providing annual crime report statistics for public information. The post-certified Cal Poly Police Department is charged with maintaining the safety of our campus and providing education outreach around crime prevention. We have robust title programming through the Civil Rights and Compliance Office, working under mandates of federal law and CSU executive order. This includes investigative programming as well as education and preventative outreach. After Kristin Smart's disappearance, we created the SAFER program to provide advocacy, confidential resources, and training, workshops, and proactive outreach on the topics of sexual misconduct, domestic violence, and stalking. Departments across campus work closely to examine potential public safety issues in the physical campus, such as lighting and access to address, and prioritize issues as they arise. As with all aspects of our campus community, we examine all these programs and procedures on an ongoing basis with an eye toward continual improvement. Jeffrey G. Armstrong, President, Cal Poly. Wow. I don't know. I like the way it started, but then it got, I don't know. The rest of it was just kind of CYA, if you know what I mean. All right, moving on. Kristin's story has had a lasting impact on the university community, and current students say it has shaped their college experience too. Here are some statements from current Cal Poly students, 27 years later. Quote, coming here and always thinking about that and knowing about it, but then still never having closure on it, end quote. Another student said, quote, I really resonate with Kristin Smart and her case, especially the trial, considering I'm from Salinas, Monterey County. She said she was living in very close quarters with Chris Lambert and the Smarts, as well as the Flores families, as the trial took place. Moving forward, she'd like more accountability from the university. She said, quote, obviously the university had a big impact on this case in the beginning and how it ultimately ended up unfolding, end quote. Now there is a slow, safe ride where a bus or van will give you a safe ride. The SAFER program now provides resources pertaining to sexual misconduct, domestic violence, and stalking. Students want more done in honoring Kristin's legacy, something like an annual celebration of her life and her memory on her birthday, death anniversary, or both. One student said, quote, there needs to be something they are doing annually that people can expect, end quote. Kristin's family has not made any comments regarding the latest Cal Poly statement. Late March, Paul was transferred out of SLO County and he was moved to North Kern State Prison in Kern County. Paul has mostly been housed in SLO County Jail since his arrest on April 13th, 2021. He was housed in Monterey County during his 3-month-long trial, and Paul's transfer happened less than a month after his sentencing of the maximum 25 years to life. And this is printed correctly this time. At sentencing, the judge called Paul a, quote, cancer to society. She said, quote, it is necessary to remove you from society so that you can no longer prey and victimize women. You deserve every day you have left behind bars, end quote. Side note, way to go, Judge O'Keefe. My friend actually sent me this text that day. He actually thinks he may have been behind the prisoner transport van. When he's done being evaluated and it's all said and done, Paul could end up at any number of California state prisons. Just days later, local news sources featured the prosecutor and DA investigator speaking about post-trial items and key trial evidence. Prosecutor Chris Prevel shared the two most important pieces of evidence in his mind were Paul's 1996 interview from that June. It showed Paul had zero remorse. He and the judge both referred to Paul as a psychopath at Paul's sentencing hearing. Paul didn't care back in May of 96 when everyone else was worried, sick, searching, and doing all they could to find Kristin. And he, sure the heck, does not care now. Chris recalls how Paul lied throughout the entire 1996 interview, so cavalierly. Chris feels the second evidence that was key to the case was the gravesite below the deck at 710 White Court. He said the blood in the grave convinced him, and he was ready to convict from there. California state prisons evaluate convicts prior to prison placement. The chance of reoffending is measured as part of the evaluation. Paul rated a 23% chance. And for me personally, that number seemed a bit low. What's your opinion on that? Put it in the comments below. I'm curious. Paul's pre-sentencing report considered multiple aspects of Paul's life, such as education, jobs, his multiple prior criminal convictions, and so on. The report also noted that 46-year-old Paul continues to deny any involvement in killing Kristin. Side note, he is so soulless he can't even some way, somehow reveal Kristin's whereabouts. He just lies, denies, and lies some more. He was a liar since he was young, enabled by his parents, in my opinion. Pinocchio Paul has hurt others before Kristin and more after Kristin. Like Chris said, no remorse. Judge O'Keefe denied Paul's probation and required him to register as a sex offender. Paul's 23% reoffending rate is considered medium risk. Paul's education section of the reports said he graduated from Arroyo Grande High School. He attended Cal Poly for only 1 year, majoring in food science. He earned an associate's degree in liberal studies and business from LA Harbor College. The report refers to Paul as, quote, well-educated, end quote. He was only 4 classes short of earning his business degree from Cal State Dominguez Hills. Paul lied and said he had never been suspended or expelled from school. And the SLO Sheriff's search warrants discovered several notices of school suspension for Paul. Before Paul's arrest, April 13, 2021, he was employed by a company that connects skilled workers to small company brands. Paul has also worked for a meal prep delivery service, a moving company, Coca-Cola, and other employers. His coke job allowed him to purchase his home in San Pedro. That house has a lien covering legal fees, and he's over $200,000 in debt. He has no retirement fund, according to the reports. His 1960 Bel Air car is a salvage title, and his 1956 GMC truck doesn't even run. He relinquished ownership to his mother, Susan. Between 2000 and 2016, Paul had multiple convictions for DUIs, driving on a suspended license, and drunk in public. Paul started drinking alcohol at 17 years old and acknowledged he would drink too much at times. He also admitted his issues with alcohol, arrests, and convictions. Paul claims that he's very close to his mom, Susan, and dad, Reuben, also his sister, Ermelinda, and before his 2021 arrest, he was involved in his niece and nephew's lives, ages 8 and 10. The report includes police reports, including Paul's reports and details as to his suspected involvement in Kristin's murder. Interviews with several witnesses provided a portrayal of Paul's sexual misconduct and predatory behavior, which included detailed instances of women claiming Paul either raped them or another form of inappropriate touching. Hence the hero-doe rape witnesses that were important in helping convict Paul. The report included the evidence found in the February 2020 search of Paul's house. The authorities recovered numerous homemade porn videos with Paul digitally penetrating, sodomizing, and having sexual intercourse with unconscious females. Many of the videos were found on an external hard drive and computers saved in a folder called, quote, practice, end quote. Child porn was also found. Every time I hear this, I get so angry. What the heck? The report further states, quote, an enormous amount of porn material was found on Paul's devices. Paul was obsessed with sexual conduct involving drunk girls, rape fantasy videos, depicting sexual intercourse with drunk, passed-out females. The child porn includes males and females, which is very disturbing to me. Detectives also found a prescription for generic Flexerol, which is a water-soluble muscle relaxer, and it should not be used with alcohol. The prescription was prescribed in 2015 and expired in 2017, with 11 of 30 pills used. There were also 2 empty bottles of canine tramadol. A local anesthesiologist indicated tramadol would cause significant changes to a person, especially if mixed with alcohol. Tramadol, Flexerol, and alcohol can cause amnesia and non-responsiveness, and the person would not know what was happening. The trial presented Paul had a pattern of drugging and raping women in years following Kristin's murder. Law enforcement noted Paul's type of behavior had a direct correlation to Kristin, and as she was extremely under the influence when she was last seen. The porn, witnesses' statements of Paul's unwanted sexual advances, and sexual assaults on multiple victims convey his mindset contributed significantly to Kristin's death. The report covers plea bargain discussions between Smart's family attorney and Paul's attorney in 2003. Jennifer Hudson's interviews and Susan's phone call with Paul were included in the report. Reuben's former roommate's information was included, and Kristin's temporary gravesite was mentioned, and that she was dug up as well. I'm surprised how thorough this report is. I find it interesting. I hope you find it interesting as well. In Paul's November 15, 2022 interview, he said, quote, "The police can't corroborate witness statements, and I never used drugs." Paul said there were so many lies involved. He said, "I never met these people. I don't understand how these people I've never met put me on the stand. I didn't do anything." Paul insisted he never brought a girl back to his room at Cal Poly. Paul said police and FBI followed him for years, and he blamed them for loss of employment. Paul said he planned to join the Navy, scoring a 98 out of 99 on the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery exam, but was prohibited due to possibly being involved in Kristin's disappearance. Paul said the investigation only rekindled during election years for the SLO sheriff. Side note, Susan spouts that nonsense all the time. Paul maintained his innocence and expressed frustration with law enforcement invading and interfering with his life. According to the report says Paul had remained free for 25 years since committing the heinous crime of murdering Kristin. Although he's been convicted for Kristin's murder, justice has been denied to Kristin's family until Kristin is returned to them so they can properly lay her to rest. The risk assessment does not measure sexual deviancy, but is reportedly used alongside other sex offender tools and is good at assessing, quote, general criminality, end quote. The 23% median risk score is measured within the year time frame as far as reoffending. The reports mention Paul's, quote, utter lack of remorse for his reprehensible, aberrant behavior and continues to maintain his innocence. He, quote, maliciously murdered Kristin, end quote. Callously disposed of her body, sexually victimized other women since the murder. He's deprived closure by withholding Kristin's location. The family's only solace is that Paul has been removed from society where he can no longer victimize women. The supervising PO recommended the max sentence for Paul. The report goes on about the far-reaching impact on SLO County and the county the Smarts reside in as well, and even in the communities where Paul's rape victims reside. Quote, the safety and security of the community would be gravely jeopardized should the defendant ever be released from custody. This next quote from the report was powerful to me. I just hope they actually stick to it. Quote, the fact that the defendant eluded capture for the murder of Kristin Smart for 25 years while continuing to prey on and victimize numerous women in the community, coupled with his utter display of lack of remorse, are all factors that should be considered when the defendant becomes eligible for parole, end quote. It basically says, don't ever let this monster out. Now I see why the other article said 15 years to life. As stated here, his first parole eligibility could come in about 15 years. From North Kern State Prison, Paul will be assessed before being moved to a more permanent facility to serve out his sentence. Apparently, the Los Angeles DA says they don't have enough evidence to charge Paul for assaults against the other rape victims, and apparently additional victims have come forward since, but no formal charges have been filed. I don't get it. Rape tapes, drugs, witnesses, DNA, what the heck else do they need? That's more evidence than most rape cases have. The child porn speaks for itself. It seems like a slam dunk to me. It just boggles my mind, and it pisses me off, quite frankly. Kristin's family looks back at the case, and the Smart's attorney, James Murphy, has been part of this all since day one, the very beginning 27 years ago. Murphy knew it was Paul from day one. He wanted Paul to know he was never going to get away with it. He said he ended 50 interviews over the years by looking in the camera saying, quote, "Paul, we're going to get you," end quote. And that's exactly what we did, Murphy said. From depositions to court appearances, attempts to hold Paul liable in civil court, hundreds of news interviews, and his billboard within walking distance of Paul's mom, Susan's house, Murphy is thankful that Paul finally faced a jury of his peers. Murphy spoke on Paul's lies, dubious background, bizarre behavior, and his predatory nature towards women. He recalls speaking with the Smarts after the verdict. He told them he loved them and congratulated them for their courage. They were happy but disappointed that Reuben, Paul's father, was not convicted. He credits SLO Sheriff and Chris Lambert and his podcast, Your Own Backyard. Like so many others, Murphy's one regret and the true heartbreak is not knowing where Kristin is and knowing the Smarts have not been able to properly lay their daughter to rest. He says it's sad and important spiritually. They may pass without burying their daughter. He shares he would be happy and actually lose it if she was found. Murphy says the reward most likely will not be paid. Quote, "If you're going to do great work for humanity, don't put your hand out for a check," end quote. Murphy will meet with the Smarts soon to decide if and how to move forward in the civil suit against Paul and his parents, Reuben and Susan. Are you ready for this? Paul is officially appealing his murder conviction. He filed with the California's 6th Appellate District. He has a new attorney, and his former attorney, Robert Sanger, filed back in April. The new attorney is Solomon Wallach. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was appointed by the state. I was wondering how Paul could afford another trial. There's the answer. What a trip. I didn't know he could do that. May 3rd, the California Office of Attorney General filed motions to move the case to the 2nd Appellate District, which oversees SLO County versus Monterey County. Paul's attorney quickly filed opposition to the move. Let's end this episode with the latest comments from Kristin's family. Most of the interview was familiar, how Kristin was failed from the beginning. Kristin was blamed for her own disappearance. People said nasty, unfair, ignorant things about Kristin. Her family spoke of all the good times and Kristin's heart and how she showed it. She was a proud big sister and a ray of sunshine. Some of what really stood out to me was advice given to the family by then State Senator Mike Thompson. Before I cover that, I'd like to say, now Congressman Mike Thompson is a longtime family friend of my family and one of the very few politicians I appreciate. I'm nonpartisan, so this is not a political angle. Sometimes we have to remember they are humans. Now is not the time, but I have good stories regarding my personal experiences with Congressman Mike Thompson. Okay, back to the advice he gave Kristin's family back in 1996. It sticks with her to this day. Denise said, quote, "He's already taken your daughter's life. Don't let him take your family. Don't let him take your marriage. Don't let him take the life of your children," end quote. Side note, I've always been impressed by the Smarts and how, even through tragedy, they remain united in marriage and as a close family. We ourselves are healing from a recent loss of a child, and it's very hard on a relationship. Adding in murder and that she's still missing, it's so much to bear, so much pain and grief. When Thompson shared the advice, it made Denise angry originally, since she still thought Kristin was alive. But as the years passed, it became a mantra that kept her going. Thank goodness for Mike's wise, sound advice. The Smarts did their best to shelter their children from the grim details of their sister's disappearance. For now, the search for Kristin continues, and Stan and Denise say they will search until she's found. This episode ended up longer than anticipated, so I'm going to have to make a separate episode about Kristin's Hawaii friend that I've been talking to and my interactions with him. This script alone ended up being 14 pages long, but she's worth it, like I said. Hashtag find Kristin Smart.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.